Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining another episode of the Educational Leadership Podcast. We have another very special guest. Before we introduce our guest, we do want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Ideal Impact. Ideal Impact's giving away hundreds of millions of dollars away to education. So if your district needs unrestricted funds, reach out to Ideal Impact. Today, we have a very special guest. We actually have um, James Ponce from Texans Can Academies, and it's a charter school here in Texas. James, thanks for joining us this morning.
Oh, thank you for asking.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have a lot of interesting conversations around education on the podcast, and everybody has so many different backgrounds. If you don't mind, just so our listeners can get to know you a little bit, can you share a little bit about your background?
Yes, I think this is my 33rd year, if I can believe it. Started out as a kindergarten teacher in Dallas ISD. I worked my way up through that system and left there as the deputy chief of staff. Went to McAllen ISD for 7 great years and did some work there as superintendent. And then I was asked by my mentor to come back to the Metroplex and join Texans Can Academies. He was on the verge of great things and needed some adjusting, and he asked me to go ahead and do that for him, and I took the challenge. One of the things about it was that it was kind of what my focus has been, kind of the urban ed, the most disenfranchised student. So we're considered a dropout recovery system within the state of Texas, but we've moved our kind of moniker into it's an accelerated educational program. And I usually talk about, it's just that student who life has gotten in the way, and that's been my focus ever since I started teaching. Of just happen to be with the students who kind of life has gotten in the way, whether it's through their parents, through themselves, just where they are, or just because that's the way life has been for them.
Yeah, I think I get what you're saying. So, there's different situations where students may need some additional support. Is that kind of what you're saying?
And that's what we are. We offer that support. At times, what I found through the years, it's not so much the failure. There's a lot of failure involved, whether, like, say, it's on the psychosocial side or the educational side. But what I'm honing in on as I get older, I don't know if it's wiser or just you just missed it, is that there's a lot of rejection with the students we serve. And any student who's having trouble in school, you feel that sense of rejection, and that's what most people in general, they don't mind failure, because failure, you usually kind of gain from failure a lot of times. It's rejection, and then that constant failure where you feel like you're being pulled back, and we try to change that trajectory. Not try, we actually do it. We're one of the largest, as we when we look at the dropout recovery system in the state of Texas, and that's what we do for students. A lot of caring adults, and a focus on getting you to graduate and into the skills after high school, so you can start dreaming again. And that's a big part of what we do.
Yeah, let's peel that back a little bit. So these students are, is it more of an academic struggle? Is it a social struggle? Is it something happening at home that's causing difficulty focusing? I mean, what is kind of the typical situation that you see? Or is there one?
It's it's yes, it's a combination. And once you get into high school, you see how that has manifested itself into that sense of, where am I? What do I need to do? Surprisingly, and we're in 2024, and we still have students of first generation graduates, and they're not the first generation Americans, and that's what's crazy about it. But a lot of it is just when you reach the 9, 10, you're 16, 17, 18, all that seems just so overwhelming. It's surprising also that graduation still is pretty an abstract concept. To most of it's pretty concrete, but for our students, it's still abstract. The concept of credits, earning credits, passing the state exams, being able to put those two together so that you can actually graduate. That also becomes a little overwhelming, knowing that you're kind of running out of time, in a sense of just getting older, and you sense that something has to happen and something has to change. And that's why we exist. We make that happen, and we make that change for them, knowing that we're their best chance of graduation.
So it sounds like y'all are doing something different than maybe traditional education, for lack of better phrases. Obviously you still have students and people involved, right? So there's always the social impact of whatever that could look like. You still have the academic element because you have to meet a certain threshold. So what do y'all do exactly that kind of sets you all apart from just going to a, your typical K through 12?
You know, I think what sets us apart really is that it's a history of in '85 is when we actually started. Grant East started what is known as Texans Can, and in '93 we were one of the first charters. But I think it was that whole mentality of really focusing in on that student who was the most disenfranchised. And I think that that strand upon the culture has continued. And I think that the difference is a lot of caring adults in a smaller setting. Our largest high school is 500 students, so it's a smaller setting. You have those mega high schools where you get lost, and then like say the number of caring adults. It's not that it's any different from the ISDs. They're our partners, and when you think about the educational ecosystem, but I think it's just that we have a different focus. We know who we receive, and we know their needs, and then we really focus on fine tuning in a short amount of time. Even though we compress the 4 years into 2 years, we usually don't have 2 years with them. So we know that immediately we have to gain their trust, and then from that, then you begin to kind of think about what it means to graduate and what it means to be successful. So it's a lot of trust and a lot of little bits of success, so we can quickly hook you and know that graduation is within arm's reach.
Very interesting. Curious, I mean, I do some reading on my own and that sort of thing, and just kind of, understanding people a little bit. And obviously you guys are probably, I mean, I don't know what the right phrase is, but you got to really understand people more than just academics. It seems like. How much do y'all focus on the belief, like the actual belief in the person, like believing in themselves? Because you know, I don't know. You hear about, it all starts with the beliefs, then thoughts, then action, and that sort of thing. And obviously the external factors can influence that. I mean, how do y'all start at that point, or is it more focused on the academic side?
Well, that is big. It has to be concurrently, because of the time frame we have with the student. But that is the big piece of it. I just mentioned when you talk about even staff has played a big role in realizing when they come to us who they're going to be teaching. And when you talk to students, they'll always tell you about, well, someone finally cared about me. And it's not that others don't care. I think it's just at a different level, and that's that first feeling, that sense of, wow, somebody really has taken the time to care about that I come to school, or care about that I'm going to do work. Sometimes we do have that social contract. You kind of leave me alone, I'll leave you alone. Then you moved along until you get to high school when you really need credits, and that doesn't work anymore. And then that's when people start realizing, wow, I was kind of done a disservice. I know a lot of times they're not able to advocate for themselves, but that's the other piece that we try to give to them, is that you got to start advocating for yourself. You have to start realizing, when I ask you how many credits you have, that's the first part of your advocacy. So it's not only, like you said, it's about the credit that I know I need to get it, but it's about, I can believe that I know whatever that number is, that to when I get to 26, that it's an accomplishment that's within reach, and within that short amount of time that we give to them. And it's kind of counterintuitive. They have students that are behind, and yet you're accelerating. But that's the only way to get them through. You don't have 4 more years with them. They're 17. They're not going to be with you 4 more years. Everything has to fall in place just right. So we quickly have to make you believe in yourself, and then believe that you can make things happen. And that's what turns the corner. I started out as a kindergarten teacher in the second, and then I moved to second grade. And I always tell everybody, in second grade, if you remember too, they always ask you, what do you want to be when you grow up? And you usually draw it out, and you write a little couple of sentences about it. No one ever told me they wanted to drop out. And so that's what I always ask students, like, what happened? And I remind them, like, I remember when you had to do that. So what happened? Nobody ever folded it up and said, in sixth grade I'll stop going, seventh, eighth, ninth I'll drop out. So we try to instill again, what was that dream? And it's within your reach, and let's get you back there so you can make something happen like you did when you were a little kid and wanting to do that.
Yeah, yeah, that's amazing. That's powerful. It's it happens in adults too, right? They get to a certain point in their life and they quit believing, they quit, they lose the dream. They drop out, right? In a variety of ways. Um, so that's interesting. So when you're looking at students that obviously there's a certain point where a decision's made. Okay, the student probably needs a little more support. What are some of the common pillars, if you will, of like, okay, the student checks all the boxes that they need some, we better intervene, or they're going to drop out or whatever.
Well, that's usually our students when we talk about if you're in education, there's about tier one, tier two, tier three. But if you know those tiering systems, when you get to tier four, uh, you're usually in special education and really honing in on some special needs for you, but or a lot of intervention. When I tell them they come to us, you're already on tier five. You've dropped out, so there's no more tier one. So we are the intervention. Texans Can Academy is the intervention. The whole existence and being and the thread of our whole effort is that we think, and I tell everyone in the entire organization, you have to think about yourself as the intervention. So whether you're a teacher or you're in the finance department, everything revolves around that. So when you're talking about that, it's just a lot of what we do for you is different from what you've done. It doesn't seem like when you walk in the classroom, but it's just a lot of intense focus on knowing that here's kind of the formula that we know to get you to pass your end of course, because of course you have to do that. So then here's the formula for passing your credits, your classes, so you can pass your credits. So that combination is just an intense, and then finding out what do you need, and if it's online that we could supplement that, it's in person that we can supplement that. But the whole idea is you're in constant intervention mode, and that we are the intervention. So you as a professional have to know that my game has to be at that level as well. So knowing that anyone that comes to me will be at any place on the continuum, and I have to take them from there to pass an end of course. And that's what it's all about. Because if I can't get you to pass 3 of 5, I'm lying to you about you graduating. So that's been our whole focus, regardless of where you come from. We know, and we set the whole system up that you have to be ready as a professional, and you have to instill that in the students and their parents or guardians that we will be the ones to make it happen for you like that. And sometimes it happens, and we don't ever let students know that you can't come back. We tell them, you go regroup, and when you're ready, come back and get it going, because it's an intensive, accelerated program, and you have to be ready for that. And we'll do everything we can for you while you're with us. And sometimes some students aren't as ready as they need to be. We ask them to go regroup, and then we always welcome them back. And we have a lot of students, and there's a lot of stories about, man, James came across, and and we finally got him across. And that's kind of some of our highlights. And a lot of our students, that's what they know, that and it may be a little butting heads, but we'll never give up on them.
Very good, very good. What percentage of the students would you say are students with disabilities versus students with just environmental factors that have affected them?
That's interesting because a lot of that is like blended. For our students, sometimes you got identified. Some students didn't get identified. And when we're a pretty homogeneous group of students, whether you've been identified with a disability or have not, we pretty much know your profile. Yeah, we have uh, when we look at how we onboard you, we do a lot of that just to get a little bit more of the data. But you're coming to us with a lot of data. You're coming into us in high school, so you have a long history of how you've behaved academically, and in some cases now we know how you've behaved on the other side of the coin. So it's hard to tell because there's not like a finite amount, because it's like I say, when we first started the conversation, our students are getting to us because a blend of that's been happening to them. Excuse me.
Kind I don't know if it's the right analogy or not, but it kind of makes me think of like Mike Tyson and Cus D'Amato, because you have that coach that Mike Tyson's story, where he started.
I'm
There we go.
sorry.
Oh yeah, I know it. I know it's the allergies going on. Um, so yeah, I guess it reminds me of that a little bit. Mike Tyson's story started out, he was, but he got turned around and became one of the top heavyweight fighters in the world, right? Just because of the support and guidance. Obviously, we're talking academics here and not sport. Well, I guess sports could. Um, I guess that's another question as far as sports go. Do you guys have like sports programs as well, or
No, most of it is after school.
okay?
We have more club and kind of intramurals. When you look at our student, we want to get involved, and sometimes ask, well, where's all the football and basketball? We tell them is, you're in a unique situation where we have to stay really focused on what's going to get you to finish school, and that's what the investment is. So, like I say, we do have the after school programs in some cases. Some schools there is that, but it's basically intramurals. When you think about it like that, or just club sport, it's not anything that intense.
Well, just the last question. Could you share a success story that you've had you know, within your school system?
Oh God, every student who graduates is a success story. That's what I tell them when they ask us about, well, what's your dropout rate? I said it's 100%. Every student who comes to us has dropped out. I said they should ask the other way. What's our capture rate? But every student is a success, and that's what. As I've gotten older, I get a little bit more emotional. But I said, this student was told either indirectly or directly, you're not going to graduate. That's why they ended up with us. So just that graduation, walking across, and I invite you to one of our graduation ceremonies, you'll see what I'm talking about. Um, it's incredible at that transformation, that change you have when you come to us. But I'll tell you one just the other day. There's a student who our district office is at one of our schools. We're on the third floor, and there's a kid. And I caught him one time. He's over talking, and he's like, "Man, I don't come. I come in late anyway because I've already failed. Absence failed the first period." So I pulled him over. I said, always ask him, how many credits do you have? And then he didn't know. So I said, the next time I tell you, you got to talk to me about how many do you have. So then he started talking, and I said, well, if you're trying to graduate, I said, how are you going to graduate if you're missing first period? Anyway, so I saw him just Friday, and he was coming in late this year again and telling me, I'm serious. But Friday, he's part of an after school program that we have that has to do with construction. And I saw his badge. He was sitting there waiting for the bus. And remember, we don't have school on Fridays. So he's coming up on Friday to complete this program. You have to come voluntarily.
Mhm.
So I asked him, I said, hey, man, you coming to school on time? He goes, yeah. I said, oh, you're in the program. He goes, oh, that's been great. That's been great. And then he just went off on, man, you should see my grades now. He goes, I worked it out. I live far. I get to come in late now. Not late. We have a late arrival. But he goes, you should see my progress on the online services. He goes, I'm passing all my. He just like flipped the switch on how an after school program in construction kind of theory had just transformed his whole idea of I'm coming to school now. I'm passing my classes. I'm moving on with my online credits, and I'm on track now to graduate. And that's the conversion. And that's what I was talking about, a kid who's kind of, and now he's like very focused. He knows his graduation date. And I don't have any doubt that he will meet that graduation date. He's even talking now because I didn't think about construction as a career, and I didn't know that inside jobs in construction. And he just went on and on and on about what was possible. And that's what we try to do is we change that, like, coming late, to all these things are possible now for me. And that's all we're trying to do. We're just trying to say, hey, look, everything is still possible for you. And that diploma makes it's still a value. There's still a big value on a diploma. So we just want to make sure that every student realizes that there's still value in themselves, in the diploma, and that is possible for them.
Amazing, yeah. And man, so as you're talking, I'm just thinking, what if y'all weren't around? Like, where would these students be? Where
The
that's a scary,
streets.
yeah,
Yeah,
scary
the
thought.
streets. Yeah. That's what we talk about. The former CEO, and he used to say it all the time. He goes, our competition is the streets. And we do say that if in our post COVID, we've taken a hit on enrollment, and as everybody heard that all around, that enrollment takes a hit. But for us, it's very much so exponential, that anything that happens to any of our students. But we staying open in some of the places. We've gone to a small school model in some of our cities, but we're in that neighborhood because if we're not there, there is nowhere for them to go. There are dropout recovery schools within cities, but not at the volume and rate necessary for all those that are dropping out. And like you say, we do believe we are their best chance for graduation. So yeah, you're right. Where do they go? And that's been my angst, ever since I started teaching and started realizing, and that's why I got into the superintendency, because that's like, I'm affecting 22 students here, but I need to affect 22,000 or 220,000. And that you hit it right there is like, where do they go? So hopefully we get more and more energy around the concept of that we can make things happen at a different level, and then you go to scale differently than most because of what we do for our students.
Yeah, yeah. It's amazing when you talk to people and you hear their story about where they started, and then if they either had a turning point in their life or they didn't, and then the end result of that. So that's so powerful what you guys are doing. And how many students go through y'all's program a year? Just kind of curious.
We have about 2,900 students now. Before COVID, we had 6,000 students enrolled, and they used to come in about 85% of the time. But now we're about 4,000 students who come through, 85, 80% of the time. That's been the struggle. But yeah, we still have now. Right now, we have about 3,500 students that are coming through, and hoping to keep that and grow that a little bit.
And it's multiple high schools, right, around the area?
Correct. We have 5 in Dallas, two in Fort Worth, one in Austin, one in San Antonio, and 3 in Houston. And then we have a virtual academy that we're getting off the ground as well.
Very cool. Well, I know we're running short on time here. Last question. I mean, obviously you've met a lot of leaders in your career. If there was a leader in education that you'd want to have come on the podcast and and share their story like you did, who would you recommend?
You know, I don't know if you had Michael, also on. He was in Dallas ISD for a long time, real big time now. He's a big influence, and he has a lot of individuals out there across the state that actually went through him. He's kind of Tom, like they used to talk about Tom Landry and all the assistant coaches. But he's one. When you look at Steve Flores, I don't know if you've talked to Steve Flores before. He was at Round Rock. That's where he was before he retired. Those are 2 names. I'm trying to think. Robin Ryan. I don't know if you talked to Robin Ryan then or before. That's another individual that you could talk to. Yvonne Durant. Uh, she's done some great things. Let me think through Orlando Riddick. So that's just a kind
Yeah.
of a handful of students. I mean, of superintendents or have been superintendents in the past that I think you could talk to.
Yeah, yeah, we'll have to reach out to them. It's always exciting to hear, you know, the, there's so many different there's so many great leaders out there, right? And all of them have a different story and with a common mission. And so it's amazing to have these conversations. Well, I know we're out of time here, but I want to thank you for being on the podcast today.
No, I appreciate you reaching out and giving us a chance to tell our story a little bit. So that's been great. I'm glad you accepted that I was able to come on.
Yeah, very cool, very cool. Yeah, the message you shared is so powerful, and we can all do our part in the world. And I think you are. It sounds like you guys are making an amazing difference in a lot of lives. So that's awesome. Okay, well, for those that have been tuning in, before we close out, we do want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Ideal Impact. Ideal Impact's giving away hundreds of millions of dollars to education. So if your district needs unrestricted funds, reach out to Ideal Impact and stay tuned for future episodes of the Educational Leadership Podcast.